She is nobody. She is just our housemaid. My daughter's words echoed through the hotel lobby. Strangers stared. Her husband laughed. What she didn't know. I owned the place. I never imagined my daughter would look me in the eye and call me worthless. But that's exactly what happened in Lagos, Nigeria, at a place I had poured my heart and soul into building. What happened next changed everything. Stay with me until the end and let me know where you're reading from so I can see how far this reaches. 68 years old, I thought I knew what family meant. My name is Amara, and I had worked my entire life to give my daughter Chidinma everything she never had growing up. After my husband died when she was only 9 years old, I raised her alone in the crowded streets of Surulere. I sold groundnuts on the roadside, washed clothes for wealthy families, and did whatever it took to put her through university. Chidinma grew up to become a pharmacist, married a man named Emeka who came from old money, and moved to Ikoyi, one of the fanciest neighborhoods in Lagos. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I barely knew. Over the past 7 years of their marriage, Chidinma had slowly distanced herself from me. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became rare. Excuses became endless. So when she called me 3 months ago and invited me to spend 2 weeks with them in Accra, Ghana, my heart nearly burst with joy. Maybe this was my chance to reconnect with my daughter. Maybe I could finally build a relationship with my grandchildren, 11-year-old Ada and 13-year-old Chinedu. Maybe, just maybe, we could be a family again. The night before we left, I couldn't sleep. I had packed and repacked my small bag 5 times, making sure I had brought gifts for the children. I had saved money from my small pension to buy them nice things. A soccer ball for Chinedu. A beautiful dress for Ada. I wanted them to know their grandmother loved them. The flight to Accra was uncomfortable. Chidinma and Emeka sat in business class while I was placed in economy, several rows behind them. When I tried to suggest we could sit together, Emeka just laughed and said, "Mama, business class is expensive." You wouldn't understand. Chidinma said nothing. She didn't even look at me. I told myself it was fine. At least we were traveling together. At least I was included. We arrived at the Golden Gate Hotel in the heart of Accra. It was magnificent. The building was tall and modern, with huge glass windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Palm trees lined the entrance, and well-dressed staff members rushed to help guests with their luggage. I had never seen anything so beautiful in my entire life. But what Chidinma and Emeka didn't know was that I had seen this place before. Many times, actually. 'Cause I owned it. Let me explain. After my husband died, I didn't just sell groundnuts and wash clothes. I saved every single kobo I earned. I bought a small shop. Then another. Then a small guest house in Surulere. I worked 20 hours a day, sleeping only when I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. I studied business books from the library. I learned how to manage money, how to invest, how to grow. Over 30 years, I built an empire. I own 12 hotels across West Africa. In Lagos, Accra, Abuja, and Kumasi. The Golden Gate Hotel in Accra was my newest property. I had bought it 3 years ago and spent millions renovating it to perfection. Every chandelier, every piece of furniture, every painting on the walls, I had chosen it all myself. But I never told Chidinma. I wanted her to love me for who I was, not for what I had. I wanted her to be proud of her mother without money clouding her judgment. I wanted our relationship to be real. Looking back now, that was my biggest mistake. As we walked into the lobby, I felt pride swell in my chest. The marble floors gleamed. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Guests moved through the space with the ease of people who felt welcomed and valued. My staff had done an excellent job. Chidinma marched straight to the front desk, her high heels clicking against the floor. She was dressed in an expensive outfit, her hair freshly done in long Brazilian weave that probably cost more than most people earned in 3 months. 39 years old, she was beautiful, polished, and completely cold. Behind the desk stood Kwame, my front desk manager. He was a young man I had personally trained, someone who understood that hospitality meant treating everyone with respect. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, but I shook my head just a fraction. Not yet. Good afternoon, Kwame said with a warm smile. Welcome to the Golden Gate Hotel. How may I assist you? Reservation under Okonkwo, Emeka said, leaning against the counter as if he owned it. We should have the presidential suite. Kwame's fingers moved across the keyboard. Yes, Mr. Okonkwo. Your reservation is confirmed for our executive suite. Unfortunately, the presidential suite is occupied for your entire stay. I watched Chidinma's face harden. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes narrowed. That's unacceptable, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Do you know who my husband is? His family has connections everywhere. We demand the presidential suite. I sincerely apologize, Mrs. Okonkwo, Kwame said, maintaining his professional composure. The executive suite is truly luxurious, with a private terrace overlooking the city. I'm certain you'll find it. I don't care about some second-rate room, Chidinma interrupted, her voice rising. I want what I asked for, and I want it now. I stepped forward, hoping to calm the situation. Chidinma, my dear, maybe we could just see the room first. I'm sure it's lovely and… Chidinma spun around, and the look on her face made my blood run cold. Be quiet, she hissed. Nobody asked you to speak. The lobby had gone silent. Other guests had stopped to watch. Hotel staff members exchanged uncomfortable glances. I felt heat rising to my face, shame washing over me like a wave. But Chidinma wasn't finished. Listen to me, she said, turning back to Kwame and pointing at me as if I were garbage on the street. Do not listen to anything this old woman says. She is nobody. She is just our housemaid. We brought her along to watch the children. She has no opinion here. She has no voice. Do you understand me? The words hit me like physical blows. Housemaid. Nobody. No voice. I stood there, frozen, unable to breathe. In my 68 years of life, through poverty, through widowhood, through struggles that would have broken most people, no one had ever spoken to me with such venom. And never in front of strangers. But what came next destroyed me completely. Emeka burst out laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a full, genuine laugh as if Chidinma had just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. Oh, baby, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. You're absolutely right. She's just the help. Mama, please go sit down somewhere and stop embarrassing us. My own daughter. The child I had sacrificed everything for. The girl I had raised alone, working my fingers to the bone so she could have a better life. She was standing there, calling me a housemaid while her husband laughed at my pain. I felt something break inside me. Something that had been holding me together for all these years. Kwame's face had gone pale. Madam, he said softly, looking at me with sympathy that made everything worse. Perhaps you would like to wait in our lounge while we sort this out? Yes, Chidinma said before I could respond. Take her away. And make sure someone watches her. She has a tendency to wander off and get confused. You know how old people are. More laughter from Emeka. More stares from strangers. Some were holding up their phones, recording every humiliating second. I picked up my small bag, the one I had packed so carefully with gifts for grandchildren who barely knew I existed. I walked to the elevator, my back straight despite the crushing weight of shame pressing down on me. Every step felt like walking through mud. Behind me, Chidinma was still yelling at Kwame about the presidential suite, her voice dripping with entitlement. She had never worked a day in her life for anything she had. Everything had been handed to her. First by me, then by her husband's wealthy family. As the elevator doors closed, I caught Kwame's eye one last time. He gave me a small nod. He knew who I was. He knew that with one word from me, I could have Chidinma and Emeka thrown out of my hotel so fast they wouldn't have time to blink. But I stayed silent. I wasn't ready yet. The elevator climbed to the 8th floor, and with each passing number, something inside me shifted. Pain was still there, sharp and deep. But alongside it, another feeling began to grow. Determination. That night, I stood on my room's balcony, looking out at the lights of Accra. The city sparkled below me, alive with possibility and promise. I had built this. I had created jobs for over 400 people across my hotels. I was respected in business circles, sought after for advice, known for my fairness and integrity. But in that lobby, I had been reduced to nothing more than a housemaid being shouted at by my own daughter. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Chidinma's words. She is nobody. I saw Emeka's mocking laughter. I felt the weight of strangers' stares. The next morning, there was a sharp knock on my door. When I opened it, Chidinma was standing there, dressed for a day out. No, good morning. No, how did you sleep? Just orders. We're going to the beach, she said without looking at me. You'll stay here with the children. We'll be back this evening. Chidinma, I said quietly. About yesterday. What you said in the lobby. She waved her hand dismissively. Mama, don't be dramatic. I was stressed. These hotel people don't understand customer service. Anyway, the children are in their room. Make sure they eat lunch at exactly 1 o'clock. Ada is picky, so don't give her anything with vegetables. We need to talk about this, I insisted. There's nothing to talk about, she said, already turning away. We're on vacation. Just do what you're here for. And what was I here for? Not to bond with family. Not to create memories. I was here to be free childcare. An unpaid nanny. A convenient solution to their inconvenience. I spent that day with Chinedu and Ada. They were glued to their tablets, barely speaking to me except to ask for snacks or complain about being bored. When I tried to tell them stories about when their mother was young, they looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Grandma, Ada said eventually, not looking up from her screen. Mama says you used to be very poor. Comment caught me off guard. Well, we didn't have much money when your mother was growing up, but she says you lived in a dirty house and had to beg people for food, Chinedu added, his eyes still fixed on his game. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That's not true, my dear. We were not rich, but I worked very hard. I never begged anyone for anything. Mama says you make up stories about being rich now because you're ashamed, Ada continued. She says you pretend you have money, but really you're just poor and embarrassing. I sat there, speechless. Chidinma hadn't just humiliated me in public. She had been poisoning my grandchildren against me, filling their young minds with lies so they would see their grandmother as a pathetic, delusional old woman. Your grandmother is not poor, I said firmly. And I don't lie. Ada just shrugged. That's what Mama says. She says you live in a tiny room and pretend you're important to make yourself feel better. In reality, I lived in a penthouse in Victoria Island, Lagos, worth more than most people would earn in 3 lifetimes. But my own grandchildren thought I was a lying, impoverished old woman. When Chidinma and Emeka returned that evening, they were glowing from their day at the beach. Chidinma's skin looked freshly moisturized, her nails newly painted. They looked like people who had spent the day being pampered. How were the children? Emeka asked, scrolling through his phone. They were fine, I replied. 'Cause what else could I say? Good, Chidinma said without looking at me. Tomorrow you'll watch them again. We have a spa day planned and then dinner with some friends we met. I watched my daughter walk away and I realized something. This wasn't going to change. This was my role in her life now. Free labor. A convenient grandmother to be used when needed and dismissed when not. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I left my room and walked through the hotel, seeing it through different eyes. This was mine. I had built this. And I was being treated like garbage in my own property. As I walked past the hotel bar, I heard voices. Familiar voices. I stopped, staying hidden behind a decorative pillar. Chidinma and Emeka were sitting with another couple, drinks in hand, laughing loudly. The thing is, Chidinma was saying, she's getting old. Very old. And old people don't last forever, if you know what I mean. A woman I didn't recognize laughed. Chidinma, you're terrible. I'm just being realistic, Chidinma replied. Emeka is her only child, so eventually everything comes to us. The question is just how long we have to wait. My heart stopped. I pressed myself against the pillar, my hands shaking. Wait, the other man said. I thought you said your mother was poor? What would you inherit? Then I heard Emeka's voice, and it cut deeper than anything else. That's what we let her believe, he said. We've been telling her for years that we're helping her financially. She thinks we're so generous, paying her rent, sending her money. Truth is, she has a decent pension from some government job she had years ago. She's not rich, but she's not broke either. More lies. I had never received a kobo from them. I had been the one helping them. I had paid for their wedding. I had helped with the down payment on their house. I had covered Ada's private school fees when Emeka's business hit a rough patch. So why bring her on vacation? The woman asked. Free babysitter, Chidinma said simply. She's so desperate for us to love her, she'll do anything we ask. It's actually kind of pathetic. She follows us around like a lost puppy, hoping we'll throw her scraps of attention. They all laughed. The sound echoed in my ears like broken glass. And when she gets really old, the man asked. Like needs care. Government home, Chidinma said without hesitation. I'm not ruining my life taking care of her. She's not our responsibility beyond the bare minimum. But she's your mother, the woman said, though she was smiling. And she did her job raising me, Chidinma replied. Now it's her turn to be out of the way. Honestly, I give her maybe 10 years, and then we'll finally be free. I stood there behind that pillar, my entire world crumbling around me. This wasn't just casual cruelty. My own daughter was discussing my death as if it were a long-awaited vacation. You know what's funny? Emeka added. She actually told the kid she owns hotels. Can you imagine? My mother-in-law, who lived in a slum in Suralere, claiming she owns hotels. The delusion is real.